Hello and welcome to another episode of the CHGO Fire Podcast, presented by Coors Light, the official domestic beer partner of Chicago Fire FC. Chicago, choose chill. Go to CoorsLight.com/CHGO Soccer to get Coors Light delivered straight to your door. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Hello and welcome to this episode, and goodbye to the 2024 Chicago Fire MLS season. You shall not be missed.
Oh, so great.
It was
some fun.
It was so great. It was historic in ways we will get to shortly. I'm Alex Campbell. I am joined by my most frequent partner in crime, that is Mr. Joe Chatz. Joe, how are you?
So good to be with you as always. And Lawrence is here. It's a win-win.
Yes, look at me.
Yeah, we got Law behind the scenes today. Shout out. All right, we need to talk about, before we get to anything else, now that the season is over, just how bad the Fire were. We will begin with the final Eastern Conference bottom feeder standings, and the Fire with a league lowest 7 wins on 30 points. Going up the table, the Revs and Nashville SC each get 9, as do the Philadelphia Union. Toronto FC wins 11, DC United wins 10, but had a whole bunch of draws, so that propels them up to 10th. Joe, before we get more to the Fire, there are some other funny notes here. DC United did not make the playoffs, the top 60% of the league, despite having Christian Benteke score 24 goals.
It's amazing.
That should be hard to do. It should be very hard to do.
MLS, baby. MLS.
Shame on you, entire DC United defensive core and goalkeepers. I can only imagine your underlying numbers were atrocious. The Philadelphia Union missed the playoffs for the first time since the Chicago Fire last made the playoffs. That would be 2017. It's going to be an interesting offseason in Philly where they can either try to run it back with a lot of the same guys, or Jim Curtin can just choose to blow the whole thing up and start over. And then a big heartfelt thank you from everybody involved in the Chicago Fire to the San Jose Earthquakes. With their measly 21 points and only 6 wins, they prevented the Fire from winning the wooden spoon. So thank you to the San Jose Earthquakes, who, of course, 1/7 of their points came from beating the Chicago Fire this year.
What a boring game on so many levels.
Yeah, I was asked yesterday by a former co-host of this show, Nick Moteris of Glasshouse Soccer, if I could find 11 points for the Fire to make the playoffs.
I'm looking right now.
And that included the Fire beating the Earthquakes instead of losing. I still couldn't get there. I think the most I could reasonably squeeze out was about 9. That's how bad it was. You want to know how bad it was? Let's take a look at the 5 worst seasons ranked in Chicago Fire history. And there you have it if you are watching on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, 2024, the worst of the Fire have literally ever been. Yes, other years have felt bad. Yes, other years they have won the wooden spoon. But 30 points and the tiebreaker going to the win column to just edge out 2015. This was literally the worst Fire season ever. Joe, I don't think it felt like that, but when I looked it up yesterday, I can't say I was that surprised.
When you look at the last 3 months of the season, that's really where it all sticks to you. They had, 2 wins after July, pretty much. September 14th against the Red Bulls, and then the 17th of July in Cincinnati, which thank you for doing that while I drove there. I appreciate that. So 3 wins after July 1st for the Fire. So it didn't feel that bad earlier. But yeah, the lack of wins on the back end of the season really didn't add up, because those numbers aren't good.
Yeah, this is actually not the Fire's lowest win total in a season, though, because, man, 2014, I don't remember well, but it was weird because the Fire only won 6 games that year, but they had 18 draws. They 34. They play 34 games in a season. The 2014 Chicago Fire drew 18 of them, and thus managed to stay out of that top 5 list.
It's over half.
Yeah, it's a toxic relationship there. It's like, dump me or don't.
It's that's just cruel. Like, why are you doing that to yourself? Anyway, to your point, Joe, it did not have to be this way. After that win against Red Bull on September 14th, which left the Fire in a position where they were fully in control of their own destiny, they then lost 4 of their last 5 games, including a 4-3 loss at Charlotte, and then just getting blown away the other night 3-0 on decision day by a Nashville SC team who also had nothing to play for. So, you know, it wasn't great, and we flow from that into the news of the day, which is that bad teams have consequences, and the Fire, unsurprisingly, based on the tone of last week's press conference, which we'll get into more in our second segment of the day, we're not surprised that this came very quickly. Roster decisions are here for the Chicago Fire, and it's a bit of a mixed bag as we take a look. Staying are Jonathan Dean, the right back / left back / left wing back, and Jeff Gall, who is currently serving as the goalkeeper for Fire 2 when they are prioritizing winning games. It's no offense to Mr. Patrick Lawson, his teenage self, but so that's what Jeff Gall is up to. He gets to stay. Wyatt Omsberg and Javier Casas are both actively still talking to the Fire about potential deals. The Fire have, what that means is, expressed an interest in keeping them at a certain number, and then it's up for those players to decide, do they want to, take the what they've got in hand, or do they want to go out shopping for maybe a better deal? Free agents, here's the big news. Fabian Herbers, the longest-serving member of the Chicago Fire, is no longer with the team. More on him in a moment. Rafael Schihos, after 2 very good years and then 1 pretty difficult year this year, is going to be a free agent as well. Spencer Ritchie, the longtime servant, backup goalkeeper, and mentor to both Gaga Slonina and Chris Brady, thank you for your service. And Ariel Lassiter, who is going to go down as one of the weirdest signings in Chicago Fire history, because he was signed when he was on a yellow card suspension and then allowed to go on 2 international breaks. So he basically never played.
Really nice guy, though. Good player. This made sense, but the timing of it just couldn't have been worse.
Yeah, no. If he ends up re-signing and is back in the team next year, I won't be mad about that at all. And then the weirdest one, Alan Aragoni, who went from being the first name on the team sheet and a must-play every game to exiled almost completely out of the squad. His loan is expired, and the Fire have declined his purchase option, which certainly I need to take back some of my words that I said about it at the time, where I was complaining on this show about Alan Aragoni not starting. Frank Klopas had his reasons. We did not know what those were. Gregg Berhalter has evaluated the situation and has come to the same conclusion that Frank Klopas did, and that is that he does not want Alan Aragoni as part of the Chicago Fire. So if both of them are in agreement on this, I'm going to assume, Joe, that shows that there's good reason.
Yeah, and just Aragoni was on a real salary that was kind of high given what you should be able to get at value at that position in MLS. So I can also understand why they would go to the idea that they can find something better, or at least equivalent value for something a little bit lower on the MLS cap.
Yeah, especially when you think of the fact that they kept Dean and Sue K is still under contract. Yeah. If that's your situation that you're going into the offseason with, right back is going to be one of the top spots you're circling as a place you need to go recruit anyway. So, yeah, that's not a huge concern here. But I do want to spend a moment, as I'm sure he deserves, and the Fire did this as well. They put out a nice tribute video to him today. Fabian Herbers, the longest-serving Fire player, the only guy who was on the team when I started covering this team in 2019, who is still there. He is the only player to wear all 3 versions of the Fire crest. That will always be a fun piece of trivia. He can claim that. He wore the red kits before they got rid of them as well, so that's another fun thing. He's the only person to do that. He was originally acquired in the offseason between 2018 and 2019 in a trade with the Philadelphia Union. 152 games for the Fire over his 6-season stint. A man who played every position, I think, besides center back and goalkeeper in his time at the Fire. We're going to count wingback as fullback. It's close enough, and he played both of those on both sides this season. He was last year also inducted into the Creighton Blue Jays Athletic Hall of Fame for his legendary career there back in his college days. Fabian Herbers as a soccer player is somebody I always enjoyed watching, Joe, but I think I and a lot of Chicago Fire fans, we're going to miss Fabian Herbers because he is simply one of the nicest people you will ever encounter in the world of American soccer.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And he's also a poster child for what you can be and how you need to evolve from a college striker to maybe being something else in MLS. Came from Creighton, was a number 9 mostly. Then, as you said, becomes a jack of all trades. He has to go through Bethlehem Steel and Philadelphia Union, doesn't play there that much. Then comes to Chicago and really thrives in a million different roles. A nice guy, happy to talk after a win, a loss, whatever. Really helpful for the media, honestly. But a very good type of player that every team needs, but another one where you can tell yourself you can get that at a different value. So I totally understand why they probably said sayonara to him, but he is going to get picked up by somebody in MLS if that's what he wants.
Yeah, because if he had stayed on the Fire, he would have been somebody. Again, there is an expansion draft this offseason. I don't think we know the dates on that yet, but there will be an expansion draft for San Diego. And Fabian Herbers, if he was still on the roster, would have stood way out as a guy who isn't going to make your top 7 or 8 protected, however
100%.
many it is. But as a veteran presence, as a versatile guy, would have been a great option for a new team like San Diego. He could still end up there, but now he is fully in control of his destination, versus in that scenario would have basically been you could stay with the Fire or you could go to San Diego, and that's a bit limiting. So, no, I think, whatever happens, salute also to a fellow in hiatus soccer podcaster. I'm sure he's going to be back doing that once there aren't restrictions on that particular skill set.
Expansion draft is December 11th.
It's December 11th. So San Diego's current roster, I believe, is Chucky Lozano, Alex Mighton, who if you're a USMNT/US Youth National Team sicko, you will know that name. And also Paddy McNair, which if you were watching the Premier League in the early days of Manchester United being total crap after Ferguson left, you will remember that name as well, as a guy who got like 80 appearances for Manchester United for absolutely no good reason. Looking at the rest of these guys, I also think I want to spend a second here, Joe, on Rafael Schiehoff.
Oh, yeah, Capitan.
Because Rafa, when he came from Köln in the German Bundesliga, that was seen as kind of a coup. The timing was good because he was being phased out a little bit as an every game starter there. The funny thing is, I think the first time I ever watched him play soccer was that first soccer game of COVID. It was like... Okay. It was Köln against, I don't remember who they played, but it was like the first sporting event that happened during the pandemic. And I remember I had watched that game, and then a few months later, the Fire signed him. I'm like, wait a minute, I know that guy. Yeah. Also, shout out to a friend of the program, Jake Payne, and his Köln fandom and his sadness today at Rafa no longer being part of the Fire, and the entire Chicago Köln family that Jake has cultivated into loving that team.
Cultivated. Come on. It's
right
there. Yeah, it's right. It was right there.
Missed opportunity. But Schiehoff, he was a really good player for 2 seasons.
Yep.
He was an excellent MLS center back for 2 seasons. And then Father Time comes for everybody. And we saw that play out. And I think he would admit that this season was a tough one.
Wasn't his best. Injuries came up. He was dealing with some weird leg stuff. He got older. These things happen. He loved living in Chicago. He's one of those people that helped put Chicago, at least in terms of actually being a good destination for European guys in this new generation. So he really helped in that regard. Didn't raise the ceiling, which, he's a center back. He can only do so much, but really a good servant to the club. There's a world where he could somehow be a Fire manager in the future.
Absolutely.
The Zara outfits are already picking themselves out if he chooses to do it.
Also, I discovered today, and I did not know this because I have no idea what his parents were doing for work at the time. He was born in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, his dad was working there.
So
the first thing I asked him.
So the bag is there. If he wants to go get that bag, the door is wide open. Also, salute as well to the Ford F-150 Raptor truck he drove, because it was the most American thing he could have possibly done. And it was also always just very enjoyable to see that thing hanging out in the SeatGeek parking lot. We are going to take our first quick break of this show. When we come back, we have Gregg Berhalter and Joe Mansueto comments from the press conference last year. Later, we're going to get to Fire 2 as well. But first, a few comments about those who make this show possible. CHGO Fire is presented by the official beer of Chicago Fire FC. That's right, that's Coors Light. Between work, social media, the choices life throws our way, if you have a crazy busy schedule, if your sports teams are driving you mad, Coors Light celebrates rising above all of that and choosing a chill mindset. If you get a rainy day like today, you could turn a rained out party into a karaoke party indoors, or you could settle the scores of a tough loss with an ice cold peace offering of a cold pack of Coors Light. Make the choice to choose chill and then reach for a Coors Light. Coors Light is mountain cold refreshment. When the mountains turn blue, it's as cold as the Rockies. So when you embrace a chill mindset, it's a good time to choose chill and crack open the official beer of the Chicago Fire, Coors Light. Make the most out of the times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door with Instacart by going to CoorsLight.com/CHGO Soccer. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. CHGO Fire is also, of course, brought to you by our good friends at Shady Rays. The weather insists that it is still summer, and so you should prepare for all your remaining adventures outdoor accordingly with our friends at Shady Rays. They are rated over 5 stars by 300,000 satisfied customers, thanks to their durable frames and crystal clear optics for whatever you are doing outdoors. Hundreds of styles, shapes to choose from, different levels of lenses to match your price point, colors to match your favorite team. So many excellent choices. If your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, you don't have to sweat it. It's the most insane protection in all of eyewear, their lost or broken replacement guarantee, something I myself have benefited from. Shout out to Shady Rays. Also, if you buy a pair of Shady Rays and you don't love them, you can exchange them for a new pair or return them worry-free within 30 days. There is no risk when you shop, and their team always has your back with personal and fast support. Exclusively for CHGO listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the year. Head to shadyrays.com and use code CHGO for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right, Joe, let's get to this pretty cool event you and I attended last weekend, which was the introduction of Gregg Berhalter as the Fire's new director of football and head coach. It was at the Waldorf Astoria in a quite fancy hotel over in the Gold Coast neighborhood. Shout out to the Fire staff who all put that on. Jamie, Jess, Rudy, Carlos, E, everybody else, you know who you are. It was a really nice time and really well put together. And it was a weirdly positive vibe to the whole thing, considering we were there for a team that just had literally their worst season ever.
There was a level of understanding, honesty, and when you put out that you've got the new coach, you've already put your current head coach in a new role, there's an understanding. And fortunately for us in person, Joe Mansueto was willing to make some headlines, some real estate headlines. Okay, first off, he admitted it was disappointing, wasn't happy with the 2024 results. What you need to say, and it was
more,
bad.
he's kind of alluded to this before.
Yeah.
Joe Mansueto has not done open public press like this in a long time. So I think it was important that he was pretty blunt about the state of things, and he was there, and he did a nice job of threading the needle of thanking Georg Heitz for the impact he made, for the progress the club made internally from the point that he and Georg arrived until now, while also saying the difficult part out loud that, the team building was bad and the team kind of sucked.
And you needed to say that. You needed to say that for a fan base when you're consistently trying to still sell tickets into a stadium that you would love to fill more. And even with their attendance going up still, there's a lot of things that can still be improved in that regard.
So the real estate headlines, of course, you're alluding to, Joe, and this is something you and I both got quoted by lots of people, including friends of ours like Brian Sandalo, Guillermo Rivera, other people all pointing out that this was the biggest part of the entire day. And I quote from Joe Mansueto, "Soldier Field has limitations, we have to be honest. The warm summer days and fall days are really precious, and we would love to have as many of those as possible. We prefer not to have to play on the bookends when it's cold, and the scheduling is certainly an issue with Soldier Field." He also mentioned how it's frustrating that even when the Fire do have a run of home games, Soldier Field is often not available during the week to the team because the grounds crew has to focus on recovering it from a Bears game or a concert or whatever else. Quote, "We've been doing site tours. We're looking around. To me, it's the last piece of the puzzle with this club," which he listed after moving to Soldier Field in the first place to get out of Bridgeview, totally revamping their business side, getting Gregg Berhalter and his new sporting leadership, finishing the training center as the other things. Quote, "The last piece is the stadium. Having our own soccer-specific stadium is what we would like to see, so we are actively pursuing that. If we can find the right place in Chicago, I think we'll move forward with it." Joe, this has been a story that on the Chicago soccer front in general, there has been little bits of smoke from both the Fire and the Red Stars over the last year. And it's like, okay, clearly something's going on behind the scenes, but what exactly? And now we have Mansueto out here just saying, oh, yeah, we are actively trying to buy a piece of dirt and we're going to put a stadium on it.
Yeah, it's necessary. He really threw a wrench in some of the other owners in Chicago's plans when he, reaffirmed then to Paul Tenorio, our friend from The Athletic, that this is going to be privately funded. I know at least one owner who owns a team at 35th and Shields that doesn't want to hear that. And frankly, the Red Stars don't want to hear that either. They've talked about wanting to get funding for a stadium. So the fact that he was willing to reiterate that, and I know people weren't expecting him to actually list sites, and when it was the 78, Michael Reese Hospital, and Lincoln Yards, those are real sites. Those are big sites. There have been proposed developments on at least a couple of them. I know Michael Reese, that was an older site looking at like the 2016 Chicago Olympic bid, but there's possibilities everywhere, and the reaffirmation that it would be also in the city, at least for me, a city person, really matters.
Yeah, well, especially Joe Mansueto's no dummy, and he knows he is extremely familiar with the current Chicago sports team stadium discourse, and frankly, the stepping in buckets and stepping in mud and stepping on rakes that the Chicago Bears and the Chicago White Sox have done in recent years to totally mess this up. So we're going to be in Chicago. No, we're not going to the burbs. Just listing the 78 and just kind of like laughing and pointing at Jerry Reinsdorf, I can imagine, metaphorically, while doing it. Because then, of course, the next day, I'm going to forget the name of it, but the development company that currently owns the 78 lot put out a statement like, oh, actually, we're open to 2 stadiums, which was totally we might be in trouble here sort of situation. Michael Reese Hospital, if you're not familiar, it's in Bronzeville. If you were to take I-55 to where it ends into Lakeshore Drive and you go south, it would be the first exit. There's a Metro Electric stop right there. It's right by the water.
It's gorgeous.
The other thing about all 3 of these sites, they're all flattened already. There are no buildings in any of these places you need to move. So this would be a question of, because Joe Mansueto is, according to, I believe, Forbes, now an estimated worth of $7.5 billion, and that is more by a quite significant margin than any other Chicago sports owner, which is kind of crazy to say. Yeah, I mean, he can kind of, if he can make the right things happen, he has flexibility in a way Jerry Reinsdorf, for example, with the White Sox, does not. And also the commitment to this team is coming into the city. We are not moving anywhere. He said all the right things on this one.
Media win. It was a media win for the Fire, something they haven't had in a while. And I wasn't expecting it to get that kind of coverage. I was expecting more just, general Gregg stuff and passing of the torch, all that, trying to be nice, but real headlines made and things to be excited about in terms of real estate. Now, you don't root for a soccer team to be excited about real estate, but, it's something to be positive about.
And again, as a Chicago sports observer and the nonsense we have watched around here recently, it's refreshing for an owner to just be like, I would like to buy a piece of dirt. I would like to build a stadium on it. It's like, see, it doesn't have to be that hard. Also, billions of dollars helps. Anyway, Gregg Berhalter did also talk at this press conference, and he said a lot of nice things. I think the most fun thing, though, about it for me was that, and this actually came from Mansueto, for those of you who weren't following along, the Joe Mansueto opening remarks portion of the press conference went for like 20 minutes, which was actually great because it wasn't like he was just like filling time. He clearly had like a list of things he wanted to talk about, all of which was coming off the top of his head, and he just like was just chatting for a while.
He included Georg in there. We all have lists of things.
Oh yeah, no, but you know what I mean. Like he was just kind of looking out at the room and just shooting the shit for 20 minutes, which was like, I'm like, man, is this just gonna keep going? And like, I wasn't minding because he was saying interesting things. One of my favorites of which was that the day after Gregg Berhalter signed the piece of paper that he was going to be the Chicago Fire's new boss, he was at Mansueto's house the next day, like going through the roster and like talking Mansueto's ear off about what he thinks of the players. The thing, before we even talk about what kind of coach Gregg Berhalter will he be a good coach, yada, yada, what and I think you as well, Joe, appreciate, and Lawrence is probably with us on this one, Gregg Berhalter is just clearly a giant soccer nerd, And at the very base level, I relate to that very strongly, and I appreciate that about him.
Yeah, the shoes too are fun. Yeah. But Mansueto mentioned to me that because I was like, okay, where'd you guys have lunch? He mentioned that you had lunch. I was looking for color for my story, right? Trying to get something. He's like, oh, we ordered it into the office. Sorry. Anyways. But then, it literally went from a discussion in the office to, all right, let's go. Let's start working on this. Let's move on and let's get this going. And that's something I can appreciate. Allowing anyone into your house is very nice, but it's clear that, as we were saying, with the tone, the things are already in motion, and it's clear that they're looking to try something very, very different after, again, an incredibly disappointing 2024. We cannot discount that did happen.
Another fun quote. This is from Gregg Berhalter. Quote, in terms of recruitment, we think there's an opportunity this offseason to bring in some high-quality players that can perform in the top 5% of the league. Real game-changer type players. Are we allowed to be excited? And how much money is about to fall out of Joe Mansueto's pockets?
I don't like spending other people's money, but as a media member who loves how SEO works, I wouldn't mind some big names. I think that would be fun. I think it matters for this market, and I think the fans would appreciate it. Hugo Kuipers was a good signing. He is a good player. He hustles. He does what he needs to do. They paid it probably over market rate for him because they needed something, especially last offseason. But if you can add someone who brings maybe a little bit more quality, maybe be it an American, a South American guy, just something else to the marketplace for this team, would be really, really interesting. I don't know if they're going to be able to immediately bring in that top-level talent. I think you do have to be slightly patient, especially in the January window. That's where you just end up massively overpaying. So TBD, there's going to be outgoings, too. That's part of it. There's going to be a lot of outgoings, I think, or at least a few, again, into the June window. These things are going to take time. It can't switch just like that. Thanks, MLS. Those are the rules.
That's the thing they were very clear about. And Berhalter made this very clear in the way he commented. He's like, yeah, we're going to be better, but we're not going to be better immediately. He was this is good. You got
to make the playoffs.
He was very frank. Well, yeah, and I think he would even say that, and he did say that, in year one, you should be able to make the playoffs. But his comment about, this team being good, he's like, yeah, it's going to take some time. And the unspoken part of that is, there are some bad contracts on these books that we cannot get rid of, and we simply only have so much roster room to move the chess pieces around to figure this out. I tweeted about this during I think during that USA Mexico game last week. The Mexican market's one of the few places you can go in January, even though that entire market's overheated in general. Cesar Huerta, the young right winger at Pumas, is future. I've seen other people who are smarter than me throw his name around as a guy who should be a DP in MLS, and that somebody should maybe pay a little over the odds to go get. And the Fire, once again, do not have a single Mexican-American or Mexican international on this team.
Guti?
So Guti will qualify, I think, for that. But I should say...
I don't want to mess this up.
No, okay, so I will repeat. I will be more specific. They do not have currently a Mexican international player on the roster. They went 11 years without one before Jairo Torres joined a couple years ago.
That went great.
That went so well, but it just, when you think about, again, in MLS, it's cynical. I go back to the Chicharito Hernandez thing when he was available. It's like, I don't care in that case if you don't think he's worth what you're going to have to pay to get a player like that. Yeah. Butts in seats, man. Butts in seats.
Those post-match scarf autograph sessions. If I'm usually the last one leaving the press box who doesn't work for the Fire, the other people who are always there are the fans afterwards for those signings. I mean, when it was Guti or Shaqiri when he was still here, even with, Martin and Alan Aragoni, I think people might have bought that for Shaq, but then Shaq was gone. These things matter to this team, and it's a way to get people in the stadium.
And it's, again, you've checked all the other, what I'll call the, hit the local, ethnic interest group things a lot in recent years. We've seen a lot of Polish players on these teams. We've got seen Frank Klopas help with, Greek players, with people like Yorios Koutsias. We've seen a lot of diversity, a lot of international talent brought into this team. It's just always very weird that has not included. Basically, since Cuauhtemoc Blanco on the hat left the Fire, it's Jairo Torres, and that's it, and that makes no damn sense. Anyway, we're going to talk more about what you, our listeners, think about who should stay, who should go. Joe mentioned there's going to be outgoings. We will get to that right after one more quick break. CHGO Fire is brought to you by Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary, your home for judgment-free cannabis shopping, and a place where all kinds of visitors are welcome to explore, discover, and purchase a wide array of high-quality products. Sunnyside has everything you need to elevate your summer, your fall, whatever time of year. It is a one-stop shop for all your cannabis needs with their expertly curated menu, including over 100 strains to choose from and an easy online ordering and in-store pickup process. Sunnyside is Illinois' favorite dispensary, with locations in the city, like in River North and in Wrigleyville, and in the suburbs and throughout the state. If you're just starting out, Sunnyside has expert guidance with brands they know you'll love, like Good News and Mindy's, or if you're a pro, they've got you covered with that big and ever-changing menu, and they know you'll love Cresco and Florical's incredible quality and their consistent products. It's so easy to order online, and they've got great people in store to help if you have any questions. So you can visit sunnyside.shop, that is sunnyside.shop, for bright buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 purchases. That's right, 50% off your first 3 separate purchases when you use promo code HICHGO at checkout to qualify. That's HICHGO. Exclusions apply. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary, bright buys every day, only for 21 and over or Illinois medical card holders. Around here at CHGO, shout out to everybody here who made that awesome CHGO Bears trip happen over to London. That looked like so much fun. As somebody who adores that city and the Bears, I was quite jealous. And also shout out to the Bears for capping that trip off with an absolutely dominant performance, getting that win. Sure, that helped a lot. If you're interested in going on a trip with the CHGO Bears crew, you do have still one more chance. They're going to go out and hang out with our friends from PHNX, and when they go out and see the Bears take on the Arizona Cardinals later this season, you can go onto the CHGO events page for more info about that. Also, right now, we've got a great offer for everybody listening. If you are not a CHGO diehard, first of all, why not? You should be. And if you're interested, we are building the biggest and best community of Chicago sports fans, and we want you to be a part of it. So much so that we're giving out a special offer right now with our lowest rate ever. You could become a CHGO diehard today for just $4 a month billed annually. That's right, just $48 gets you a free t-shirt, access to our exclusive written content, plenty of discounts, and access to the CHGO Discord Lounge, where we're hanging out and we can talk about the Fire, the Red Stars, general soccer, anything else across Chicago sports. This is a limited time offer, so act now. Visit allchgo.com/intro. That is allchgo.com/intro to sign up today. Speaking of the Discord Lounge, we asked you yesterday, give us a player you would like to see stay and a player you would like to see leave. I believe the first one we have up, Lawrence, is this. Do we have Klub Scary first? We do. Ooh. And Klub Scary says there are some obvious ones, but for a less obvious pick, he wants to keep Mauricio Pineda. Says he'll be a good depth option in a few different positions despite being absent for much of the year. And I like him too much to see him leave before a successful season in a Fire shirt. Ditch.
I like that logic.
He says ditch Chris Mueller, and then anything else he says will be too mean, so he'll leave it as it's time to move on. Chris Mueller was a popular answer here of people who need to go. I'd imagine that depending on the outgoings, Mr. Mueller is going to be on the list of potential one-time buyout annually players come January. Pineda's an interesting one. We saw a bit more of Mauricio toward the end of the year after, to Klub Scary's point, he basically vanished for much of the season. I still think Mauricio Pineda is a guy whose value is as the middle center back in a back three, who I don't quite think you can trust at an MLS level at a 6 or a center back position. Do you think a guy like that, is keeping around to that point just because of his versatility?
Yes, strictly for versatility's sake, and he's one of those guys. He's just a helpful guy to have around in terms of, yes, the versatility, but also just continuity within the organization, right? He's got kind of that build. He's been there for a while. He had the successful college years. He is, he's another one of these guys where you look at their salary or MLS salary compared to, production, which you have to. These guys can get paid what they want or what they do. It's awesome. Love it. Pay them all a crap ton. But when you look at production next to it, it just wasn't there this year. He's a major bounce back candidate. He was someone who was in U.S. camps, like youth camps, when
got a couple
Berhalter
national team camp call-ups. So again, He's a good Berhalter guy, as is somebody that's shy, who is also in our comments.
Mueller is too.
Yeah, he was a Berhalter guy, so that could be interesting. Shy, who's in the comments there, also chimed in on Discord. Keep Goody, but agree Mueller with time with the fire is up. Brian Gutierrez, we talked about before, was a guy who there was an idea that maybe he should seek some other pastures simply to mix it up and get his career jump started. My guess is the fact that it's Berhalter who has come in and taken the job means Guti's going nowhere.
One of the more interesting things when I talked to Berhalter after that press conference was he said, Guti and I have a way of communicating with one another, which is really helpful when you consider how Guti is one of those kids, he's 21, sorry, who is insular, who does like to keep to himself. He is his harshest critic in that regard. So it is good to see that Berhalter acknowledge that he is not your normal high-level young prospect who's still where he grew up. He's different than some of the more flashier players that you might see in those circumstances. So I think he's another guy. He needs to get the assist numbers up again. Yeah. That was the one thing. He got the goal numbers up this year. The assist numbers fell. I think part of that was just kind of how the team played. But if he could, get those goal numbers where they were this year and the assist numbers where they were the last couple years, oh boy, it could be interesting next year for Brian Gutierrez.
I want to hit one more of these because I want to make sure we have time to get to Fire 2. Radio Maverick 24. I agree about keeping Pineda. Kutsi, I think we should also keep. I think we need to move on from Carlos Teran. This is an interesting one because Gregg Berhalter got a question specifically about Carlos Teran.
Shout out Andrea Montolivo, always sits next to me in the press box, one of my favorite guys.
So Andre asked Gregg about Carlos Teran, who notably handed in a transfer request a week before the start of the 2024 season and was told in no uncertain terms, 1, you're injured. 2, no, that's not how this works. He didn't leave in the summer. And if you notice, Gregg Berhalter said lots of things about Carlos Teran's abilities, Carlos Teran's promise, but he said it in a way that avoided saying anything about Carlos Teran playing for the Chicago Fire. I think Gregg Berhalter might be on board with letting Carlos move on and, looking elsewhere for center back options.
It seems like a productive departure in terms of what they both want. Teran always wanted to go to Europe. He's been here since 2020. He's had a lot of time to develop. It's just injuries have hampered him throughout. Yeah, he is number one looking at, the candidate that you could probably transfer to a lower tier of, a top 5 level team, be it one of those demotion teams that you might have to worry about or relegation teams in the Premier League or maybe somewhere in France or lower level Germany. I think Spain would be great for him. I think a Spanish-speaking coach would do wonders for him. Carlos is a big personality. He's a fun player to have, but he still has these moments where he goes a little out of control. And at this point of his career, I think it probably is best for him to go elsewhere just because he does need a fresh start, and he is so talented and needs to try to get to that next level because he still has the ability to do so.
Maybe he just needs to follow his similarly aged compatriot John Duran and just every 2 weeks, say, name a club he would like to play for someday. That seems to be going pretty well for Mr. Duran, recently getting that pay raise. And, also, before we move on to Fire 2, I just have to include this because I can't believe I forgot about this, and it was actually maybe the low-key funniest thing Mansueto said at this press conference.
Cool, because I started and everything.
If you were paying attention, you could have easily missed this. Joe Mansueto said, and I'm going to not get the quote exactly
Didn't
right
get picked up. I don't understand.
He said that when Aston Villa sell John Duran, Duran will become the largest outgoing transfer in MLS history. Mansueto flatly said that.
But he also implied that it was going to be soon.
Yeah.
Duran just signed that new deal. I don't it's not my, I wrote about it. I included some things, but international soccer writer, football writers, whatever you are, where are you? That's a headline right there.
Because if you do the math, it basically means we don't exactly know how big the Fire's sell-on is, but if it's, let's say it's 20%, just for the sake of argument, it basically would require John Duran to be sold for $100 million. And so the implication is that it's thought that might happen this summer. I don't know if that word got to anybody in Birmingham, but if it does, I'm sure they were none too happy. All right,
Birmingham.
Yeah. Anyway, we only got a few minutes left, so we have to talk about the fact that technically a men's professional Chicago soccer team did win a playoff game this past weekend as Chicago Fire 2 defeated Orlando City B in the first round of the MLS Next Pro playoffs. Yes, that sentence had a bunch of silly qualifiers in it. I know, just stay with me here. They won 5-4 on penalties after a 1-1 draw. The Fire goal coming from who else but MLS Next Pro 2024 Golden Boot winner David Poreba. He assisted on the 45-minute mark, and then the Fire hit the crossbar twice before halftime even arrived in the remainder of stoppage time. Jeff Gall, the aforementioned, made a huge save in the 71st minute off a corner. The Fire then had 3 great chances in the next 3 minutes. They did not score. Gall then saved a 1v1. The XG in this game was like 4-3 or something on that level. In penalties, pretty boring until Orlando hit the post with their 5th shot, and then Diouf for the Fire absolutely just hammered his in a classic defender penalty of I'm just going to hit this as hard as I can.
Best penalties.
Worked out, and we found out just before going on air, the Fire will host Crew 2 this Sunday in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Philadelphia as the top seed, them of Kevin Sullivan and friends, got the top choice. They chose Charlotte's MLS Next Pro Team Crown Legacy to play, which means Fire versus Crew. Fire are the higher seed. Fire get the home game. So that is on Sunday, just like it was this past week. I assume it will probably be all free to attend and park at again. That was a good idea last week. I assume the club will do that again. Joe,
I'll double check.
On this team, I mean, you're somebody who's watched a lot more of this team this year than I have. You were there on Sunday. What do you think this means to this group of mostly young guys? Because it does seem like, well, a lot of people might kind of scoff at whatever they consider MLS Next Pro to be.
Yep.
This is meaningful for these guys. These guys are treating this like they're playing in the big time, and that's really great to see.
Absolutely. Let's look at the first teamers who are down with the second team. So you've got guys on first team contracted, Sergio Orhel, Javi Casas, and Justin Reynolds. Justin, who played, I think, like 120 minutes last weekend, which is insane when you think about it. But you have Casas and Sergio were crucial in the build-up to the goal in regulation for Fire 2. But these things really matter to different cultures, different team. They have different objectives. They play different styles of soccer than the first team. Ludo is a very different coach than Frank and is a very different coach than Gregg Berhalter. Intense guy, mostly coached youth soccer until he's with Fire 2. Him and Patrick Niarco, it's a great staff. But this team plays fun soccer, and they go down early. Jack Lynn, MLS Next Pro legend at this point, goes and gives them the lead, or gives Orlando an early lead. This team doesn't falter, really. And then it's David Poreba, Golden Boot guy. Dude has been out of his mind. He's from Lake Zurich, under contract still in Poland. We'll see what happens in the offseason. But it was him and Christian Kofi, that's a discussion for a different day. We'll see. He's 24. He's a little old. But then the fortitude that was shown down the line. Jeff Gall, you said 8 saves, a guy who just doesn't play that much. To be able to do that in such a crucial game, he was sensational in net. The Lamont Rochester, he was done by the end, his legs. Great job at left wing back. But then you go down to the PKs at the end. Some of the youth in the PKs, it was David Poreba taking the first one.
Makes sense.
Golden Boot. Harold Osorio, one of the better players in that league when you consider talent, and especially from the penalty spot. Then you've got Peter Sudin, who would be a senior in high school or is a senior in high school. I think he's a Michigan State commit, but that's a 17, 18-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Vitaly Hloit, he's 16, nails it. And then you've got John Alpha Diouf, John Diouf, right back, center back, just hammers it in. That is the type of player that they have. They have that kind of confidence. It's irrational, and it works. And it got them to bounce back in a playoff game after conceding an annoying goal early. And this is a fun team to watch. They never say die, and they bring a type of energy that the first team just hasn't recently.
So they're the Goonies.
In a lot of ways, yes. And now I'm just trying to think of, hey, you guys, and who's that's going to be. And if there's like an older goalie on the other team, I might be calling him Lurch.
I mean, yeah, because Jeff Gall is literally like almost double the age.
Yeah, but Jeff's too handsome to be. Yeah,
of some
like
of the people on this
he
team.
yeah. That's the thing. But yeah, Jeff Gall was fantastic. Patrick Lose has been dealing with some injuries, so it looks like it'll probably be Gall again on Sunday, and why not? A good way to celebrate getting your contract exercised.
Yeah. The bills continue to be paid. We're going to probably have at least one more CHGO Fire podcast before the year is out. I don't exactly know when that podcast is going to be. Probably going to be dependent on other roster news and things happening. Maybe we'll do it like I think last year we did it the week of MLS Cup, and so that just made a lot of sense. So How soon you will see another one of these depends on basically what else unfolds in the world of the Chicago Fire. But the season is over. It's been a busy week. Onward, forward we go. New coach, probably a bunch of new players, hopefully a new stadium within the near future. There's been a whole lot of the future is bright. The Fire are a sleeping giant that needs to be awoken. We've heard all of that. And there's a few indications that maybe this time it's worth the hype. Until next time, though, I am Alex Campbell. This has been CHGO Fire. He is Joe Chatz. If you're watching on YouTube, stick around for CHGO Red Stars. Otherwise, I will see you right back here next time.
We all silly like the mayor.